Now we're back.
Oh my God.
It's been so long.
So long.
Months and months, at least weeks and weeks, if not
Yeah.
days and days.
Days and days, months and months, weeks and weeks.
But true to Finnish cultural tradition, I was like, we vacationed like big time. Like we did all the holiday trips and we did all the music festivals and
That's awesome.
took in a
Well,
lot of sun outside, went swimming all the time. And
oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. So your summer was very fun.
it was because it's so my son started school in August, and so this was the last kind of time when we can just travel as much as we like without having to worry about like absences from school. So we
Yeah.
we we made the most of it, and we did a long 10-day trip in London, which was a lot
Nice.
of fun around my birthday. But um,
Our
t-
birthday, you mean?
yeah, our birthday. But 10 days is quite a bit of time in a hotel room for
Oh
a
my
family.
God.
But
Yeah, I know.
it was a lot of fun. Like London is a nice city, and I've I visited there so many times, and I've been there as a kid as well, because we lived quite nearby. But it was interesting to be there for the first time as a parent with kids, because it is it's an incredibly big city, like such an incredibly big city. So trying to figure out what to do with kids
Yeah,
was it was a fun challenge.
I bet. I bet. Oh man.
So
But you have been, like it's good that you have been somewhere this summer. I haven't been anywhere. I've been at home.
yeah,
Again,
it's been so
Romanian
hot there.
celebration. It's been 45 degrees for a
That's
month and a
unbearable.
half. It was unbearable. And at that time, I was dealing with some changes because I'm leaving. Okay, so I'm leaving Romania. Yay! We'll talk about that later. But because, I stayed in this rent for so long, obviously wanted to leave this house in a nice place for my landlord, because you have to give it as you
Yeah.
got it, or at least close to how you got it. So I had to take a few nights at the hotel because I did a lot of stuff in the house and it was smelling, like all the substances. It was interesting to stay with the kids at the hotel in Bucharest. And actually, my birthday I was at the Marriott, and they made me this nice little birthday cheesecake.
Oh,
And
that's so cool.
I cried because that was the only thing I was able to do on my birthday besides running after these kids. It was nice. It
Yeah.
was cute. So yeah, and yeah, like Simo, I'm moving to Malmo. I'm actually going there next week, and I think if you're listening to this podcast, by the time you're listening, I am probably in Malmo. If I manage to release it when I want. If not, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I'm gonna be there. I'm moving to Sweden. That's it. I'm disrooting my Romanian roots. But yeah,
That's
just
cool.
excited. Just
Yeah,
really
Sweden is a nice
excited.
country.
It's because of you guys. I told you, like I have zero social life in Romania for some reason, and people ask me all this all the time. It's just that I always felt like I didn't fit in here for some reason. So the first time when I actually went out of the country was when I was 26, and the first country I ever visited was Finland, was Helsinki. And let me tell you guys, it's a huge difference between Bucharest and Helsinki because Bucharest is like very crowded, is because you've been here, Simo, so you know it's so crowded, noisy. There's so much stuff going on, and then you go to Helsinki where everybody's civilized, and you have one-person benches, which is the best ever, the best invention in my opinion. So why do you want some random person sitting on you on a bench?
I know,
It's so
right?
fucking weird.
And if you go to the bus, it's like all the two seaters. People just take everyone fills in only the one seat of those two, and then they put their
Yeah,
bags on the other seat.
exactly. Yeah, like that's, and I felt quite good because like I do, and I know I seem like I'm very, very extroverted, but whoever knows me knows that I'm the total opposite, and I don't really like proximity that much. I mean, I like it sometimes, but with limits. So that's why when I went to Finland, I was like, okay, like, and for some reason, Finnish people like me. I can't make it up yet because I'm like so anti-Finnish. Like I'm everything, like everything that I represent is anti-Finnish. Like I'm loud, I'm obnoxious, I'm everything. For some reason, I get along. You see, you tolerated me for 2 years.
Yeah, I
You-
did. No, no,
Yeah,
you're like an honorary Finnish citizen now.
thank you. And that's what
Yeah,
the Measure Camp Helsinki people are saying. But
yeah,
Carlos tolerates me, Lina tolerates me. And it was kind of similar with Denmark and Sweden as well. So yeah, I decided to move there. It's been a process for my family, as you can imagine, but
Yeah.
you can come with Mari and the kids and visit me because I'm trying to get like this beach apartment. I've been telling you,
Yeah, sounds good.
it's a bit expensive for sure, but like,
Yeah.
come on, like, come on, you wanna do it in a nice way. So yeah, that's it. Excited about it, and that's kind of been my summer, kind of like putting this together and figuring shit out.
Yeah.
But you haven't vacationed all summer. I know you've been busy because every week you release something. You were talking about something. I mean, we had the fun with the cookie deprecation. That wasn't no deprecation, and I feel like your meme that you always share on Twitter every year aged well
Yeah.
with the
Oh, yeah, yeah. The third party cookie deprecation. Yeah. Well, it's old news by now, but yeah. So as it turns out, Google isn't deprecating them, and
yeah.
it's like yeah. It's yeah. So obviously, like when I vacation, I do follow the news and I try to stay on top of things. But yeah, I did vacation. Like it's one of my life goals has always been that I can just drop the pen whenever I want, and or
Yeah.
get into a position at work where I can just drop things when I want. And I'm not when I want, because obviously there are some
Yeah.
deadlines to meet, but I'm definitely getting closer to that place, and I found it all the more important now that we have kids to be able to do that. So,
But you've
but
been
yeah,
working at this for a decade. Like people think, oh,
yeah.
it just came out. No, like it's you've been
Well, yeah,
working.
yeah, yeah. It is. Yeah, that is what it is. What it is. But and obviously it's required a lot of work to get there. But um, and also because the summer in Finland is really quite short. Like you get 2 months at
Yeah.
tops of good weather, and now we have this problem. So Finnish lakes and the Baltic Sea in general. Well, the Baltic Sea is really in a really bad condition. Like it's like deoxygenized. There's very little oxygen
Wow.
left, and it's like it just impacts everything, the flora and the fauna alike. But now also, like over the last 20 years or something, the Finnish lakes, many of them, especially the ones that are popular swimming spots, have this thing called cyanobacteria,
Oh,
which is classified as, or it's the like the common term for it is like seaweed, or it's
seaweed.
not
Yeah.
sea, it's lakeweed or whatever you want to call it, but it's not actually a weed. It looks like it, so it's this kind of floating green stuff on the lake, um, but it's actually a bacteria that
Algae, right?
spreads.
How do you
Yeah,
pronounce it?
yeah, algae
Algae.
is the word I was looking for. Yeah, but it's not algae, it's bacteria, but it looks
Okay.
like algae, so that's why it's called algae in Finnish. It's like sinilevä, like blue algae. But it's a bacteria. So, and long story short, there are different types of it, and some of them can be really like hazardous to you. You get nausea, and you might get, like, little kids might be sent to the hospital if they don't ingest that water.
Whoa.
And so it means that many of the swimming spots are like they're only open for like the first couple of weeks of warm weather, and then they have to close down because of cyanobacteria. So that's a bummer, because we just moved um, a couple of kilometers away from our old house to closer to a couple of really nice lakes. So we're just a walking distance away from those now, and they have really nice swimming spots. But the other lake, especially the one with the nicest spots, gets a lot of that bacteria. So we only managed to swim there for the like first 2-3 weeks,
That
and now we haven't
sucks.
been there. It really sucks. Not just because we can't swim. Like, that's a luxury we can definitely like give up. It's not like the end of the world, but the fact that we have this kind of pollution,
Yeah.
and this deoxygenization stuff, and it's just depressing, because we have some of the clearest lakes in the world and the clearest freshwater in the world, and then there's this thing that isn't really pollution, but it's kind of a byproduct thereof, and just, yeah, it really sucks.
It's kind of like it's dying, like the sea is dying because
Yeah,
like
it's kind of similar to that, but there are some really interesting research initiatives where people are building technologies to harvest cyanobacteria for like industrial purposes. Because if
okay.
there's not like a monetization involved, nobody's going to do anything about it. But now they've
Yeah.
figured out a way to maybe like harvest that stuff and start turning it into, I don't know what is it going to go into like feed, or is it going to be turning into like plastics or something? I don't know, but there are initiatives for that, so that's something to follow at least.
I had no idea about that. That's crazy because we have the same here because I'm at the Black Sea. But it's
Mm,
just that Black Sea it's so covered constantly in transportation
yeah,
between Europe and Asia because it's the only sea that connects Europe with Asia. and it's constantly like the
Yeah.
Romanian ports there. It's so much
So over
people throw
traffic. Yeah.
shit because everything that comes from Asia, like there's so many sewage and stuff that happens
Yeah.
in the sea. So I grew up next to the beach, and this year I didn't go because it was like swarming in
Yeah.
algae. And we used to have like these virgin beaches here in Romania until people figured them out, and now everybody's there throwing random
Yeah.
shit. Unfortunately, and I'm ashamed of this, like we're not the most kept people when we go outside of our homes. It's funny because we do this when we travel. Like I've seen Romanians outside of Romania and they're respecting rules, law abiding citizens. You never see them throw. But the moment you hit the Otopen airport, they're like, fuck this shit, like typical. This is like so, and I'm sorry. And if you're Romanian and you're listening this and you feel offended, știi foarte bine că asta e situația. So
What she
please,
said.
exactly. So please. But
Yeah.
anyway, no, I'm glad that you had a nice summer. I know you're also been busy. I just wanna before we get our guest in, just wanna touch a bit on the new release that you did with Pivot Pro
Mm.
for the server side template. Like I wanted just to see, like
Yeah.
how did that work? What does it do? Kind of like the
Yeah.
elevator pitch.
So ironically, I did vacation, but I also did write a
Yeah,
couple of templates. But that's coding, and it doesn't count. It's like a
dev
hobby.
side quests.
Yeah, that doesn't count at all. Like I can vacation and still write code. Like I no wait, writing code is vacation
It's
for me. Let me put it
vacation.
like that. So I work with the Pivot Pro team. They're a lovely bunch of people, and I got the chance to help them out writing some templates for server side GTM. So what we basically built is a pipeline with two options. One is to use the Pivot Pro JavaScript tracker, the one that you would deploy on the site through Pivot Pro's tag manager or with the script snippet itself, and then send the information to server-side GTM instead of directly to your Pivot Pro instance. And then in server-side GTM, you can do all the basic stuff like enrich, validate, block, cut stuff out, fire other vendors' tags with it, and so on. So you have this pipeline of taking control of that vendor data. And the other thing we built was part of the tag template that we built for server side is support for taking another vendor's stream like GA4 or Amplitude or Mixpanel or Snowplow, and then use that information, map it to Pivot Pro's format, and collect it to Pivot Pro. So the two use cases here being the first one I already described is kind of taking control. So you get to choose what Pivot Pro actually receives. You don't have to trust that their JavaScript library has your best interests at heart. It rarely does. And the other option is if you want to try Pivot Pro and you've already extensively tagged your site with GA4 and you don't want to go through the motions of tagging it again, you can just use that GA4 stream with some small modifications. You can then kind of map it and transform it into a Pivot Pro data stream and collect that to Pivot Pro. So it's been a lot of fun. Pivot Pro has a number of things going for it, and one of them is that it's so similar to the paradigm that Google Analytics represents, like this discrete model of events and sessions and users, more akin to Universal Analytics than GA4, though. So it's kind of an easy transformation to make. You don't have to worry about like backend processing stuff. Much of what GA4 does happens in the browser. Much of what Pivot Pro does happens in the browser. So you don't have to kind of worry about, okay, I managed to do this mapping, but am I ignoring all these events that happen in the server? Well, GA4 doesn't really have them, apart from session start and first visit, which have special logic. But yeah, so it was a really, really fun project, and I think that the community has really embraced it, and I'm really looking forward to just adding new
Everybody was
features.
excited that day.
Yeah,
Like I couldn't open LinkedIn and nobody was talking about anything else. It was really
yeah,
good.
yeah. But we're
Um,
definitely going to talk about this more this year. So I have
you have a webinar, right, coming
we
up?
have a webinar with Piwik in September, late September at some point. That will be definitely maybe next week already or the week after. Before the end of August, we'll be promoting it quite a bit, and then I have a couple of talks coming up, and I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. So I'm thinking this might be one of them. So Measure Summit, for example, I thought that maybe I could talk about Piwik Pro, and then
That would
there's
be a nice change. I
yeah,
would like to see that. That would be so
yeah,
cool. It's
or
kind
not talk
of
about Piwik Pro because I'm not an
no,
expert on
but
that, but talk about the pipeline stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure,
yeah.
and maybe in general about using server side tagging as a kind of a consolidation
I had
option.
somebody yesterday after they saw the video that I posted that we did
Mm.
sometimes. when we
Ah,
recorded.
yes. In a random time and a
In a
random
random
space.
time of our life, she said
Yes.
basically like, and I'm reading, um, I understand the concept, but I'm not sure how would that benefit marketing in the end, since we're using different advertising and measurement tools to deliver our ads and get the data wherever the ad has been served. Won't that be a limitation for us and therefore advertisers? And I mean, I did tell her that instead of just giving everything to vendors, client side, you choose what data
Yeah.
gets processed, but you're not kind of like um, entirely blocking the data flow to the advertiser, but just
Mm.
kind of like you're creating a control layer, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
am
for
I
sure.
wrong?
So the question was about server-side tagging in general. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Like advertising as much as it works without third-party cookies, it works just as before. Like when
yeah,
third-party cookies come into the mix, it gets a bit more complicated, but Google has a solution for that. It's not a fun solution or a nice solution
yeah.
in any way, but it does. But for like first-party advertising, like correlating clicks with ad impressions, there's of course it works just as before. You just get to choose the
Yeah,
appropriate way of dispatching that data, and you can do piecemeal setups as well. You can do ads through the browser like before, and then just focus on analytics through the server. You don't have to move everything 100%. So
it's just you're more in control in
yeah,
theory.
exactly, more in
In theory.
control. And like
In
in
theory.
my opinion, taking control of that ad stream is way more important than taking control of the analytics stream, because ads is,
Hell yeah.
yeah, historically more inclined to collecting far more than they should.
Yeah.
So taking control of that would definitely be a bonus, but it's also a more difficult pitch in the organization, because you control. Unfortunately, taking control with ads means that you actually reduce the amount of data that is collected, and many organizations are not happy with not getting that granularity that they think they need, which I could also argue that they don't actually need what they
They
think they
don't
do.
need it
Yeah,
exactly.
but it's not my I'm done with that fight. Companies can do whatever the hell they want, and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna keep writing solutions. And every now and then I'm gonna stand on that soapbox and tell them how the world should look like. But I'm luckily not in a place where I actually get paid to try to insert my worldview into other people's minds. So I'm very happy that I'm not there anymore.
I'm trying to myself, but sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
But
So on another note,
GTM tools, I
oh yeah,
don't, let's
yeah,
not
we
forget
can do a
about that.
very quick
Very
pitch about
quick
that.
update.
Yeah, so GTM Tools is a tool set that I originally released a bit over 10 years ago,
Woohoo.
and it's a way to manage Google Tag Manager containers, and it stayed largely untouched for the past 10 years, apart from a couple of features that I added every now and then. It's got like you know thousands upon thousands of lines of backend Python code and at least the same amount of front end JavaScript. It's not a beautiful code base in any shape or size,
But
and
you
I
have
got.
those pretty nodes and stuff and
Yeah,
hermits,
for
and
sure,
I
for
love
sure.
it.
Yeah, the visualization thing was a lot of fun. That I'm maybe the
So
most proud of.
pretty. Yeah.
But so I got to a point where it needed a lot of work to get up to date, and I didn't want to put in the work, so I decided to shut down the project. And I kind of said that if somebody wants to buy this domain, then contact me, because gtmtools.com apparently was quite of a valuable domain. And
Nice.
I got a couple of contacts, and nothing really inspired me. But then the lovely guys from Stape, who are the one of the number one companies for pretty much anything these days. They put out
They're
so much
great.
content and just such cool solutions, especially for server side stuff. They offered to take over the domain and to rewrite the code base and to re-release the tools in largely their original form, like look and feel, but of course with a roadmap for updates. And I was so happy, not
That's
because
amazing.
not because I got like any not because I got rich,
I
because I
know.
didn't,
It's because it
but because
doesn't
somebody
die.
took
Yeah.
over. Yeah, somebody took over this project that had really been an important one in my own development work. So gtmtools.com is where you can go. It's completely free and hopefully will stay free. You need to log in with your Google credentials that has access to a Google Tag Manager setup. And then you can do all sorts of things like copy tags, update workspaces, do bulk stuff, save
And if you
items.
have more than 50 tags, you should wonder why.
Yeah, yeah,
Why
and
do
you
you?
get to yeah, and you get to remove unlinked tags easily and unlinked variables. So it's just a
Yeah.
lovely way of maintaining. Yeah, so that was GTM tools.
Shouts to the guys at Stape and
Yeah,
Dennis.
for
If you're
sure.
hearing this, I still would have loved one of those. turquoise
Yeah,
hoodies. I don't have
the
one.
hoodies also, and we gotta have Dennis and somebody like
Let's have
from the
Dennis.
marketing team
Dennis.
over. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
let's have Dennis, and maybe Dennis will send us one of those turquoise hoodies that I had to fight with somebody for in Measure Camp Copenhagen and didn't get it.
yeah. Yeah, we have them, of course. Yeah,
I'm so jealous. Yeah, I don't
yeah. I
have
know,
them.
I know. We have all the
Dennis.
hoodies now.
Dennis. That's it.
Dennis, do it,
Dennis.
do it.
Cool. Well, this podcast, before we move on and invite, we have Michael King, guys. We have
Yeah,
Michael
my one
King
of my
from
absolute best
iPullRank.
friends. One of my absolute best friends from the industry. Michael King is an amazing person. I can't wait to
So
chat with him
excited.
about all the research that he's been doing
Yeah,
in
and he
SEO.
has a book coming up too, so really excited.
And
But
he's a
this,
hip hop guru.
I'm gonna try not to
That's your
talk about
jam.
hip hop, but let's
You're gonna
see.
fail. I can look into I can look into the future, and I know that you're gonna fail at that. I'm gonna
Stop
make a
it.
prediction that you're gonna start talking about hip hop, and I'm gonna be there like just nodding my head and thinking about when are we gonna talk about death metal. We'll see what happens.
Oh my
I'm gonna
god.
bet you 1,000 euros. We'll
Okay,
see what happens.
let's see what happens. But let's not
Okay.
forget this
Yes.
podcast is sponsored by teamseymour.com.
Wait. I'm gonna point at that is. There we go.
That's teamseymour.com, and we have Simo from Seymour here.
Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Simo from Simmer, and we do online courses in technical marketing. So go to teamsimmer.com and check them out. Use the coupon code DEVIATE, that's DEVIATE, to get 10% off any individual course purchase. Does not apply to bundles or other campaign products. And go check out our technical marketing handbook, which is a free resource that you should absolutely get your team, your colleagues, your friends, and your family to read, especially your friends or your family, so that they finally understand what you do for a living. So go to handbook.teamsimmer.com. And once you complete the handbook, so read through all the content, you'll get a nice certificate. And if you post that on LinkedIn and tag Simmer, you'll quickly find that Mari and I, who wrote the handbook, will be jumping there and congratulating you in the comments.
I've seen it. I've seen it.
Yeah, we do it all the time. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Simo from Seymour. And
Thank
now
you. Lovely
let's.
podcast you have.
I try. Cool. Well, let's have Michael in.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, here
Still
we are
works.
with my here we are with my king. Good morning. How's things going with you, my friend?
First of all, thank you so much for letting me be here.
Long
Yeah,
time.
things are crazy. Things are really crazy. It's been a very wild last 3 months for me since the algorithm leak thing. And, I was in back to back meetings every day for 9 weeks after that because so many people were reaching out, wanting to work with us, so many people wanting me to do things like this.
Yeah.
And then also client work too. So this is like, I think the second week where I've had like time to just
Yeah.
chill a little bit.
Damn.
Yeah. So you kind of introduced a number of things we want to talk with you
Yeah.
today. But one thing we want to start with is that, so it's kind of an important couple of days being for you, because your brainchild, your agency, iPullRank, just turned 10 years. And
Yeah.
I got the feeling like I think you dropped the bomb before the weekend saying that, something's coming up. And I get the feeling you've got a lot of celebrations planned for this. So can you
Yeah. I
say
mean,
something in advance what's going to come up?
I can't really speak on it yet, but we're gonna do some great things. I mean, we historically have celebrated very big at iPullRank, like boat parties, like parties in houses and Hamptons. Like we've done things like that historically, or like rooftop parties at clubs in the city. But since the pandemic, we haven't really done much, and the team is mostly remote, and so we want to get everybody together and do something really big this time, especially because it's 10 years. And, 10 years is like a milestone that so many businesses don't reach. So I'm excited to be here. And I'm also excited to see like what comes next. Cause, I think we did a lot of things by accident that worked out. I think now we can start being more intentional about what
Yeah.
we want to achieve.
Well, I think you're selling yourself short. Like if you get here 10 years and you've grown into this huge, you've grown into a big business and you have amazing big clients, and you still manage to do that like technological stuff that you do, all the research and all the articles. So looking back on those 10 years, like how have you changed as a founder? Like when you started, was it just you? I think it was just you, right?
Yeah, it was just me at first, and I was just using my friends as like contractors. And then that next year, I was like, okay, I need some help because like I can't like when you just use contractors, they do exactly what you tell them to do. But
Yeah.
running a business, people have to like pick up the nuances on things and help you out proactively. And so I needed to shift more towards that. But really, I just didn't know what I was doing at first, right? Like, I'm not a inherently process oriented person. I'm someone who's like, cool, what's the problem? Let's figure it out, you know? And like, I might use some parts of what I did before, but I'm usually looking for a new way to do it better. And that doesn't scale. Like, you've got to
Yeah.
come up with process documentation, training, and so on. So the first few years, I was just like, cool, let's just hire smart people and be like, we have these problems, let's figure out how to fix it. And I have no idea how we were getting anything done. Like, I think back to our project management solution. We went from like, Trello to Asana to Teamwork
Yeah.
for a number of years. And when I think back, they were just tasks with like names and no instructions on what we were doing. So like, how did anyone know what to do? And what ultimately ended up happening was like people would get really frustrated because there was just no process. And yeah, like I had to learn the hard way that like everyone isn't like me. I assume that if I can do it, anyone can do
Yeah.
it. And that's just not true.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have frameworks in place that work for other people because there are going to be people that you hire that are just like, I just want to know exactly how to do my job. And I'm going to
Yeah.
come in at 9, I'm going to leave at 5. And that's that. And frankly, that's most people in the world, right? And then you're going to have the amazing people who are like, yeah, I want to figure out how to make this mine and how to do this better and all the things that I was just describing before. And those are the people that are going to like shift your business in the right ways. But if the lower end of the staff can't do their part, that's just going to frustrate the higher end of the staff. So you really got to put those frameworks in place. And that just wasn't something that I was taught before. Like, I don't think I ever worked anywhere that we had really specific processes. And if they did, they just never gave them to me because I was just doing stuff.
Yeah.
So I just never had that on my mind. And that was like the thing I had to learn the hard way to be able to get to where we are
Yeah.
now.
So, by the way, do you know what other 10-year anniversary it is this year?
Your
What?
blog?
No, it's 10 years since we first met at the marketing festival in
Oh,
Brno.
wow. That's
Yeah, it was.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun because my talk was just before Mike's, and I like, of course, Mike had already published a lot at that time, and I've read a bunch of his stuff, and I remember when it was Mike's turn to come on the stage, and I was with my wife, Mari was there as well, and we were just on the sidelines. We were about to go grab a cup of coffee, and then your talk was, I think it was like, what was it, like 30 APIs in an hour or something like that. So you just drop different SEO or not just SEO, but different APIs and how to use them. And I was just like, floor, like, can you do a talk like that? Is that allowed? Like, can you do such a technical talk? Because I was under the impression that we're not like a theater, so people are expecting you to be like super telling a story with numbers and all that bullshit. And if I had known that we could do like a super
What do you
technical
mean
talk, I would.
bullshit? What do you
Oh,
mean
come
bullshit?
on,
That's what I do.
data storytelling is like the oldest trick in the book. It's deception. So anyway, but that was a fun trip. It was a cool event, and kind of made a lot of the following events after that look bad because it was so well organized. Like everything was so well catered
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But it,
Yendrik, he went to all the events, all the big ones,
yeah,
and took notes and was like, here's how I'm going to make this one better. That's how I met him. It might
yeah,
have been like MozCon or one of those events. And
same thing.
he's like, I'm here because I want to see how they do this because I want to do this thing called Marketing Festival in the Czech Republic. And he and I connected because, in my rap career, I spent a lot of time in the Czech Republic. Like I spent
Yeah,
I lived there for a summer. And so, I was like, oh, you're doing it in this place and so on and so forth. So like we connected and then I ended up doing it. But yeah,
yeah,
Marketing Festival is by far like one of the best shows I've ever been involved
yeah,
in. And, I really love how they do like a real party at the end, and then they also
yeah,
have you perform at that too. So I had a great time doing that one. I would love
yeah.
to go back.
And they always have a different, like every year has a different vibe, which is kind of different
Yeah.
from these other events that are because they have the same speakers every year and all the kind of the
Mm-hmm.
same themes. I think Marketing Festival really manages to push the. So this actually brings me to one more thing, because before I'm going to let Juliana have some questions in as well, because I miss you,
It's
man.
good to see
It's
you
been a while.
excited. It's good
Wait,
to
Yeah.
wait.
see
I
you
want to. I
excited.
want to say something. I want to say something because I was already a fan of you before I met you as well. Like I was all over your blog for all
Oh
sorts of
yeah.
reasons, and so
Oh, that's
when I
nice.
met you in person, I was like, "Yo, this dude is cool too." Okay,
Yeah.
that's what's up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we found common ground really fast. But
Yeah.
that's one thing that I want to talk to you about, because you also mentioned your rap career, and so you've been doing a lot of stuff. Like, and you
Mhm.
have a family as well. You have two wonderful kids, and so how do you find, and this is the thing that I've been fighting with for a long time, how do you find today, like 10 years into agency life, and God knows how long into music, and being a technology research, how do you find the time to be on the cutting edge? Like, how do you actively set time aside? Do you
No,
spend all nights reading stuff?
no, everyone asks me this as though like I've solved it. I have not, right?
Yeah.
Like my whole life is basically triage. It's like what is the most important thing to do right now?
Yeah.
And the cutting edge stuff is just a function of my curiosity, right? Like when something pops up, I'm like, I want to know everything about that. And so it'll be like, cool, well, I have this other thing to do. I'm gonna put that to the side today because I want to learn how retrieval augmented generation works. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
and also with me finishing my book, I've been so deep in research anyway. And so I just have a much better understanding of things, and it's easier for me to just
Yeah.
add on. And, if I'm sitting around like on archive reading white papers anyway, and then I find like, here's a new paradigm, I'm like, oh, let me learn how to do that. And it just fits in naturally with what I'm already
Yeah.
doing. But it's not because I have, mastered time management. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
It's just because I just go after what I'm passionate about at that given moment.
And you're kind of lucky that many of those things that you're passionate about are also very central to your professional career. So you're kind
Yeah,
of converging those.
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
What I will say to that, because of your rap career, a lot of people don't know, but my husband actually, that's how I met him. I was managing him. He's from US.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I gave up on my career just to do music for 2 years. And I will say to you that breaking into the US hip hop is one of the worst shits that I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, it's got to be
Everybody
difficult.
everybody wants money. Everybody messages you like, "Hey, let's work, let's collab." 100% of the time it's bullshit. And
Hmm.
I produced a lot of albums as an executive producer for UK hip hop bands. So I will say that if you don't have the job to fuel that, it's very hard to make it in music. And I know so many talented people. Like, you're from New York, right?
I'm from Philly. I live in New
From
York.
Philly, oh, okay. So in New York, there's like a bunch of dudes that used to be in Sean Price's group. It's like very, very hard to make it in music. So like, I did listen to your stuff. I saw it on Twitter. I think it's cool, but I don't think like if you didn't have the job and like the company, it would be very hard to kind of like invest. Because me and my husband got so fed up that he doesn't even write anymore. He's like, "Fuck
Wow.
this. We're just watching, battle raps, and that's it. Let's mix so we see, and then we talk shit every time when the song drops, or like it's like we've been burned, like we've been really really burned. So if you still have like the power and creativity to be able to pick up the pen, that's really cool, because it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, we're with my rap career. I got to the point where I was touring over there a lot,
Yeah,
and like around that same era when like Sean P was still alive and all those guys were out there a lot. Like, we would do shows with like Afu Ra and all those sorts of guys. Um, and it was going well, but then something happened. I'm not gonna say it on recording. We can talk about it afterwards.
yeah.
But it got really difficult for me to get shows out there as a result. And so that's when it overlapped with my SEO career.
There you go.
In fact, the first SEO job I got was right before my first European tour. And what happened was I got into an accident and I needed to get a job to pay my medical bills. And the first place to hire me was an SEO agency. And I was like, cool, I'll just keep this job until November when I'm going overseas for this tour. And I tried to quit and they were like, you don't have to. You can just work from home. And I was like, what you mean I just take my laptop on the road and keep working? They were like, yeah. I was like, what? And that changed my life. Like once I could make consistent money while also rapping, I was like, oh, this is everything,
That's it. Yeah.
And even when I started working at Razorfish in Philly, um, I was only a contractor there, and they only had me working like 24 hours a week. And so I was like, cool, let's just make my days Tuesday through Thursday, and then I can do shows on the weekend. So like, I would just like, go to Dublin real quick and do a show at my dude DJ Flip, or just like random stuff like that. And it was cool. But then I was like, you know what? If I stick with this, maybe I can make some real money. And my one of my really good friends who I used to tour with, we were actually on the train in Sweden on the way to a show, and he was like, Mike, I know you're doing SEO. My cousin has an SEO software company. I'm like, who's your cousin? He's like, yeah, his name is Rand Fishkin. I was like, what? And so like my worlds were like colliding. And then I was
Nice.
like, all right, maybe this is a sign I need to like do more of this.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, so it just worked out for me in that way where it was just all connected.
That's
So
awesome.
I have to ask a LinkedIn question, or a LinkedIn style question. So how have your marketing skills informed you as a musician, or vice
It's a
versa?
B2B,
Because
yeah.
because you released an album a couple of years ago, right?
Mhm.
And you did a lot of stuff around, like a lot of content, a lot of like you didn't pull any punches with the marketing. So
Mhm.
do you feel like the time was right for the album because you were in a certain place in your marketing career as well, or with your marketing skills?
Yeah, I mean, it was very valuable what I do in my day to day for focusing on the music. So two ways. One, creatively, I looked at it as though it was like an agile project, and so when I first released the record, none of the features were on it, and I was like, this is the minimal viable product. I can just keep updating it, and so then I got a feature from Music Soul Child, was like this platinum R&B singer. I got a feature from Little Fame from MOP, and then I
Yeah.
just re-released the records. And so every time I did that, it like increased the listenership. And so I also staggered it. I released it on Bandcamp first, and then I put it on all the DSPs. So that way I can make like a couple dollars, and then it could be available everywhere. But then beyond that, it was also like, cool, what do I do from a content perspective as well? And also, what do I do from like a traditional marketing perspective? Because, when I was coming up, it was all about traditional. Like if you were doing things on the internet, you were considered not a real rapper. They were like, oh, you're an internet rapper. You don't have vinyl.
Yeah.
Only do ads online. Like they didn't take you seriously. And so there was still this aspect of me wanting to feel official. And so I did a lot of traditional stuff. So like I did billboards in Times Square. I did, I had my videos on MTV. Like I was doing all that stuff, but none of that stuff did anything. Like what really did it, it's the playlists and whatever ads you run on like Instagram and TikTok and influencer campaigns. So we tried everything. And really like that was my, testing to see what's going to work now, because I hadn't put out a record in like 8 years, 10 years, something like that. So now I know how it works. So my next record is going to have more features, because features is what gives you more,
Yeah. Visibility.
listeners. Yeah. And then also I'm going to focus, very heavily on playlists, and I'll run ads, and that'll be it. Like I'm not going to do any of the traditional stuff. But for me, it's going to be like have fun first, because, I know it's only going to go as far as like what I spend money on. It's not the sort of thing where I put a record out and it just like goes viral. Like I don't even think that's true. Like no one does that. It's always a function of, did you get influencers to do it? Is it one of those songs that people are going to use as a sound on
Yeah.
TikTok? Things like that. And again, that's not hard to do. Like you could do that for $7,500, but you've got to have a song that's going to be catchy in that way, and that's not necessarily the type of music I make.
Yeah.
So, yes, in answer to your question, it was very helpful so I could understand like what was possible. I also found like all the right analytics tools to see what was going on, and it just helped me have a plan so I can understand like what is going to be the return from this. Whereas before it was always like, I'm just going to put this record out and then what happens? Like I go on tour, I sell a few thousand copies. Cool. Like it's not this big splash that you imagine it's going to be.
Yep.
But now with marketing, I know precisely what I need to do to be the biggest splash possible.
That's awesome, dude. Like that you're still doing it. Like for me, the biggest win that I had from hip hop is that I met
Mhm.
Easy Moby.
Oh wow.
Oh my god, like I used to work for a Finnish company called Music Info that distributes music in China, and you
Hmm.
get royalties. So I worked there because you know Simo about Music Info. I worked there. That was my first touch with Finnish culture. So I met him on Instagram, and I talked to him on the phone, and he was always like so. And I was shocked when I was talking to him. Like I was starstruck. I was
Mm.
just listening. I was like, yeah, my mouth was shaking, and my husband was like, damn, like what's wrong with you? I was like, it's fucking easy, Moby. He's so
Yeah, that's a
big.
legendary producer right
But
there.
he's a nice guy, and he's all into this sustainability and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. I would talk about hip hop all day if you
I mean,
wanted.
we can do that too. But so I live in Brooklyn now, and my cousin who's from Brooklyn, where he gets his haircut, Easy Mo B is in there all the time. You know, so like that's the thing. Living in New York, you run into
That's
these
such a New
people all
York
the time.
story.
I
That's
would
such a
love
New
Yeah,
to,
York
yeah,
story.
to meet him in
like
person. Yeah.
like Large Professor used to live in my old apartment building. I would see that guy all the time. You know what I'm saying? So like, and when you go out to parties here, you run into people all the time, right? Like one of my favorite rappers is Pharoah Monch, and you know I see him regularly,
I
right?
like,
Like
yeah.
yeah, we'll just like run into each other and we'll just like catch up real quickly. Or for instance, he his Twitter got hacked. And so, you know, his people reached out to me, his assistant Zoe. She was like, yo, can you help? I was like, say less, I got you. I love being able to
Yeah,
help the, you know, the rappers I love with the skills that I have and the
for
Yeah.
network that
sure.
I have and so on.
Yeah.
That's the we need to have you just to talk about hip hop. It's like it would be a long one because
I have
I
a
have.
lot to contribute.
We can talk about that. We
And
can
don't
talk about
forget,
Tech Nine.
my first website was about Biggie Small, so let's not forget
There you go.
Nice.
that.
We can talk about Tech Nine because Tech Nine is a good mixture of metal and hip hop, and
Yeah,
I've
Tech
seen
Nine
him.
is
you
I've
don't
amazing.
have to
seen
throw
him
me a bone. You
live.
don't have to throw me a bone.
I seen Tech in live. He came to Bucharest.
Hmm.
I've never seen in my life such performance. Like that dude can rap his fucking ass out, but still dance. And he was with Chris Calico. I have a picture with them, and I was so starstruck that my face was like this. Like I'm gonna stop. Simo,
No,
save
no,
this
I'm
podcast
just
because I
like
will go.
I love the vibe here, but
Let's
we
talk
only have
about
20.
vector
Yeah,
embeddings.
no, before we go to vector embeddings, and I know
Okay.
you want to go there, let's do a quick recap because you said you've had a busy 3 months, and it's obviously because of the algo leak. And
Yeah.
so, can we do a quick, like, give us the elevator pitch about the leak? And I want to know where we are today. Like, what's the status? Do you
Yeah.
see the industry having any impact? Because I see a lot of people being like, this is stuff we already knew, but now it's just in the leak and trying to kind of float above
Yeah.
the discussion. But
Sure. Everyone wants to be like, oh,
yeah,
I knew that
exactly.
already.
Eye
Cause I mean that
rolls.
yeah, that's people being petty because they weren't involved, frankly.
Yep,
Like
for
they
sure.
wish they discovered it, right?
Yeah,
So for me, I mean, first of all, it's the ingredients for the algorithm. It's not the recipe, right? So like
yeah.
we learn more about the features that Google is tracking and
APIs.
yeah, and how they're potentially using them and things like that. There's a lot of like little blurbs that says this is used in this way for this thing. And also validation and verification is valuable, right? Like even if we thought we knew it, we didn't have validation of it before because you know the way the algorithms work, first of all, it's not just one algorithm, it's a series of microservices that get triggered differently based on different contexts of the user, their query, and so on, right? So even if you felt like you knew everything about how search works in local search, well, you don't know how it works in video search, you don't know how it works in core web search, and even in web search, there's a variety of different ways it can work. So everything you thought you knew anecdotally, you were sometimes wrong and you weren't really sure why, right? So I think that there's a lot of value in us understanding where those edges are. What is Google actually looking at versus the things we thought they were looking at? And then there's a lot in there that we didn't explicitly know, right? So as an example, one of the things that stands out to me is they have this feature called source type, and it talks about your links being in different segments of the index. And even though that there's different segments of the index, I don't think was a widely known thing in SEO, right? Like we always looked at the index as like this one giant database or this giant big table, or just like this one box where everything goes. But really it's broken down into different layers, and where the page is linking to you live in the different layers impacts the value of the link.
Wow.
That's not something that's ever been contemplated in any of these scores like page authority, domain authority, any of that stuff, right? So understanding that tells us that link building being a volume game was always the wrong way to do it. And so, that for me fundamentally should change how you do SEO. In addition, we also have complete verification that they are using click data to inform what should rank. So, it always made sense to me that they did that. It's like a best practice in
Yeah.
information retrieval. But
But they
Google has
always
always said,
denied
like,
it.
yeah, they always said, no, it's not. It's a noisy signal. We can't use it. The reason why is because they need it so much. This is the only way at scale to verify that a user is getting what they want. And so it's not just like, oh, is this being clicked on? It's also, is it being clicked on and the user stays on the page? Or did they click on it, go back to the SERP, perform another query, and then end up clicking on that result again for the reformulated query? Or is it that they, went to your result, came back, and then left Google entirely? Like, these are all signals that they're using. And so what that tells me is that UX and SEO need to work better together. Like they're obviously completely different disciplines, but you can't do SEO long term effectively without thinking about UX. And I think that people have looked at those things in isolation for too long. And, I think you should really have like a UX person involved in your SEO teams moving forward.
Yeah.
So those are like high level things, but there's a lot of minutia in there that you can change your strategies around as well. But I would say those two things are the biggest that people should be focusing on.
How do you how do you dare to act on those signals when you don't know their relative weights, or which Google actually ends up using, or which ones are like just collecting dust in the corner of the
Yeah.
API list?
So I think you got to use the context for other things that we've gotten. So as of late, Google has been in the antitrust trial where there's been a lot of testimony about things. And so a lot of what we found in the leak reinforces the things that were said in the testimony. So they have a system called NavBoost. NavBoost is the system that drives all like the click information and user activity that's used to reinforce rankings. And in the testimony, they said like, yes, this is the biggest factor in our ranking algorithm. So while we don't have the individual weights for each of the features, we do know that they prioritize that. We also have like the history in SEO where we've seen over time different factors appearing higher in correlation studies and so on. And, in some cases, what we were measuring in SEO were the wrong things, but they overlapped with the things that Google is measuring. So as an example, like we always looked at TF-IDF in SEO, but Google's been using what's called BM25 effectively since the beginning, right? And so to some degree, they measure very similar things, but it's the BM25 score of a query versus a document that you need to be thinking about. And then also, because Juliana mentioned vector embeddings, we have definitive proof now that Google is vectorizing all pages, and they're also comparing it to a site level vector. And that gives us the sense that they are saying like, hey, if your content is too unrelated to what the core site is talking about, then we're probably going to say you're not an expert on this subject. And that content is mostly just like diluting your expertise on your core subject. So that's another thing. You can't just be writing about random stuff and expecting to rank, because Google is looking to see like, does this align with what you normally talk about? So yeah, in answer to your question, I mean, we're never going to know what all the weights are, but we can use context clues to understand like what is considered more important and focus more on that.
Right. But this, so you were you and Rand and then Dan Petrovich, right? You were the people who were first exposed to this leak. And so how does it feel to have the responsibility of translating something that's this incredibly huge and complex into a language that the 99.999% of marketers that don't understand the technology or the kind of the computational linguistic underpinnings that are here?
Yeah.
Like, how did you take that responsibility? Because you wrote a lot and you were in many podcasts and interviews and all that. Like, did you feel the weight?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been training for this my whole career. Like I've been the person. I've been one of the people that's been so really trying to figure out how does this thing work, right? And so that's the core thesis of my book. That how Google works isn't magic. It's just a series of different computer science things, right? Like it's information retrieval, it's NLP, it's computer vision, it's a variety of different things just tied together. And everyone that works at Google, they go to conferences too. They share what they've built. They share like different components of it. And when you go back to when Google first came out, they were a lot more forthcoming about what it is that they were doing, right? If you look at papers from Amit Singhal, the guy that used to run search, like he rewrote Google. Because when it first came out, what Sergey Brin and Larry Page wrote, like they weren't good at coding. They wrote something that was like passable, and then Amit Singhal, he studied under a guy named Gerard Sultan, who he's considered like the godfather of information retrieval. He came up with what's called the vector space model, which is what all search engines are based on, where you're basically taking a document and a query and you're plotting it in multidimensional space and you're figuring out which documents are closest to the query. Right. And then based on that, that's the most relevant documents, right? So the guy that built the beginnings of modern Google studied under that guy. And during that time that he was an academic, he shared a lot of papers about like, hey, here's how search should work. And then when he came to Google, he was like, here's an overview of how modern search works, which he wrote right after he rewrote Google. So if you read all these papers, you'll learn how Google works, right? And then you got people like Jeff Dean from Google, who's like considered the Chuck Norris of computer science, who is giving talks at Stanford in like '06, where he's like, here's how we built Google. The architecture was broken before, I fixed it. And I invented MapReduce and Bigtable and all these things. And so if you stitch all that together, you'll know precisely how things work. And with all this generative AI stuff, like everyone is very loud about the things that they're coming up with. And a lot of those people are Googlers, right? Like generative AI started with 8 Googlers, guys like Noam Shazir and all these other folks who were integral to the building of Google search. Like generative AI works on that same model of that vector space model. And so they just shifted it to another thing. And so you can learn everything about how this stuff works if you just pay a lot of attention to really nerdy stuff. So my book is all about taking all that stuff and then synthesizing it and making it accessible to most people. So I say all that to say that once this leak came out, I was ready. I was like, oh yeah, I've already been doing this. And I have all the context required to make sense of this stuff too. So I was excited, and it was a holiday weekend in the States. And I was just like, yeah, let's go. Let's do it. I'm getting after it. And I went through all the documents over the weekend. I spoke to Dan a bit because he had already found it like 3 weeks ago and he had already started to make sense of it. And yeah, I was like, the world needs to know how this works. Here you go.
Yeah,
That's so great.
that was awesome. And I finally now, because I know we don't have, I have 2 questions, like very important, because I'm working. This is selfish question. So if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, and you're welcome. So first question, I I had this hypothesis. Context, because people know, but you don't know. I work in CRO, experimentation data science. That's
Mhm.
what I do. So I came up with a hypothesis this summer in June, after reading your stuff, after doing a bit of research on RVix myself, because I do like Google Scholar and RVix. I found this thing called textual entailment. So I said to myself, what if I analyze search intent? I then do a topic classification using natural language processing, and that's better than SEMrush or Ahrefs, keywords ranking. It's a total different thing.
Yep.
So now that you're saying that CRO and UX should be embedded in SEO, this gives me a lot of like good vibes, because lately that's kind of like what I've been trying to push out there. So my
Mhm.
selfish question is, I'm speaking at SMX in London. I've never been at an SEO conference. Like the only thing I need, it's a t-shirt to say that I don't belong. So I just need an advice for how to go and talk to SEO people about this from a CRO perspective, because my message is, I love y'all, but y'all need some CRO, y'all need some UX. It's like let's test something. So I want to present. I built together with my colleague Rasimir. We used a specialized language model like BERT,
Mhm.
and we are doing textual entailment on directly plugged up from the Search Console, goes in GCP, and then we analyze the queries and we do topic classification, and then we kind of created this metric that is kind of like a predictive content consumption that looks at clicks,
Mhm.
scroll, average time on page. But that's
Mhm.
because I read your article. Like
Yeah,
you,
that's
you
amazing.
just wanted, to put that out there. Like I got very inspired from your articles. I don't know you, but I
Mhm.
was like,
You
shit.
do now.
Yeah, no, but I was like, you gave me hope that there's other data sources that we can look at, because for CRO, we're very much using old, dated ways of coming up with hypotheses. But search intent, because a lot of people say, okay, but you can use SEMrush and you get top keywords. And I just wanted to, I tell them that it's not the same, but maybe, maybe you could share some thoughts about why is it not the same. I'm selfish. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think your approach sounds amazing, and I would love to know more about it. But to your point, SEMrush, their data is like the best you can get from a third party perspective,
Facts.
but it's still third party perspective. A lot of it is like modeled based on a variety of different things, and it's difficult to tie it to real analytics data because it's so far away from what you can get from GSC. And that's not to say that GSC is perfect. It's a completely different
Yeah.
methodology from any other, analytics software, but nevertheless, it allows you to like plug it in a bit better than what you can do with SEMrush. And I think your approach of like building kind of like this composite score or what have you to determine like user satisfaction and so on is a great approach. And in fact, there was a white paper that Google published, I want to call it like 10 years ago. Um, I think it was called like the customer attention score or whatever. I'll send it to you. But
Please.
they effectively did something similar where it is combining clicks, it's combining like user actions on the page and a
Yeah.
variety of things to determine user satisfaction. So yeah, I think your approach is great, and I think it's definitely something that SEO should
So I won't get
learn from.
lynched, right? I won't get lynched at
No,
estimate.
not at all.
So
I think again, especially because of
the
what everyone has
reflex.
learned about nav boost and so on. Especially if you tie your talk to that, I think it will resonate a lot. Because I've always been a proponent that you should do SEO and CRO together because
Yep.
SEO, if you're not thinking about a target audience and how it resonates and how they convert, you're not driving qualified traffic. And so my approach has always been what we call like persona driven keyword research, where we're
Mhm.
aligning keywords with user segments, their stages in the user journey and so on, and using
Yeah.
that to inform things as early as like metadata and so on, so we can get people that we actually want to click on our results. So I agree with you, and I would love to see more metrics put in place for this. And in fact, we're working on a study with SimilarWeb because we're trying to see like what are some of the features of pages from a UX perspective that yields higher time on site, yields better user behavior from a search perspective, so we can identify a series of things that everyone should be thinking about uh, as they're optimizing their pages. And that's not to say like it replaces what UX people do, but I want SEOs to be more educated on how UX impacts things. So as an
Yeah.
example, if you think about like recipe pages, no one wants to know about the story behind your grandmother's apple pie or whatever. They just want the recipe. And so my hypothesis is if you have like the jump links on the page, so it brings them directly to the recipe, then that's going to be a better
Yeah.
experience for that user than like wading
Yeah.
through your grandmother's life story. And so I think it's us understanding those elements from an SEO, from a UX perspective as SEOs, is going to allow us to like come to the table and say like, hey, we need a UX person that can like do this, or a UX person that's going to bring us better ideas on how this page can be better, in alignment with a user's
And
expectations.
if you only consider SEO as from the acquisition point of view and not from retention, it's just a throwaway traffic, right?
Yeah.
You're getting them in, but you're not keeping them there. So what's the point of all that effort?
Facts. No, and I know I hijack. I have one more question. I'm done, Simo. I'll
You were
let you talk.
completely allowed to hijack.
So my last question is, I want to ask you, is there any way you can influence the search results of GPTs and other chatbots? So I read a lot about prompt injections. I read a lot about Reddit and YouTube. So right now I want to ask you, I know everybody's trying to do this right now, to change the results in, in ChatGPT. So for I read some good articles on Search Engine Journal. Is dope, but I want to know your, I don't want to say my opinions, I just want to know your opinion. So can you change the way GPT or others answer about your company? Is this a branding move?
Yeah, I definitely feel it's a branding move. In fact, I have an article I'm finishing up right now about how these are branding channels.
Okay.
And I think it's such a mistake for people to block these bots from ingesting their content because, if you're looking for like basketball shoes or whatever, and you're Nike and you're not there because you blocked your site and someone is like looking in ChatGPT, they're gonna be like, okay, like they're not gonna think about you in their consideration set because you're not meeting the expectations in ChatGPT. So as far as appearing in there, one, don't block your site. Two, there are ways that you can mark up your content so that it is better suited. So the way that these things work with retrieval augmented generation, and if y'all don't know, I'm sure your listeners will benefit from this. Um, what happens is the pages get broken down into chunks, and the chunks are different sizes depending on the methodology behind it. But what happens is the search engine that's associated with the large language model returns the most relevant chunk to the query or the prompt. And then it feeds that to the language model to generate the response. So what you need to do is make sure that you have the most relevant chunk on the web for that query. And so it's a combination of that, and also, there's a whole paper on this called Generative Engine Optimization from a few researchers, and they found that they tried all the different methods that we do in SEO. So they did like the keyword stuffing, they do all the things, and then they found that there are three things that yield better performance in these engines. One, it is more authoritative language. Two, it's citing sources, and three, it's using statistics. The statistics didn't even need to be real. It yielded better performance. And then the last thing I would say is that use all the structured data that you can. So typically or historically in SEO, we only use the structured data that gets us rich results in Google. But large language models will use all of it, no matter what you've marked up. And so what I would say is like whatever vocabularies are relevant to your page, mark that up. And then when your content gets ingested by these language models, you're giving more reinforcement that you should be related to whatever those queries are.
Right. And
Can
you're
you send me
preparing
that
for a
paper?
wider you're preparing for a wider array of search engines that consume the
Yeah.
different types of
Absolutely.
Cool.
Okay, I'm done.
We have a
Simo,
lot
I
of stuff in
promise.
the show notes today.
Please send me this paper because I'm
All of that
like
goodness.
I'm actually looking at this right now with I will shut up because I'm Simo won't be able
No,
to stay.
I'm not
done.
trying to bully you into stopping anything, but we do have to start wrapping up. But we left a lot of stuff on the table, so we are of course going to have Mike come back. Maybe so. When's your book coming out? Do you dare to say a date? Okay, so we'll have Mike back soon. And in the meantime, so let us know where we can find you and follow your incredible journey with iPullRank, or where we can read your research and everything.
Yeah. I publish most things at iPullRank.com. You can follow me at iPullRank on all the channels. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. It's
Thanks
always
for
a
having
pleasure.
me.